Ukraine's UAVs target Russian oil refinery plants, and in massive and successful strike, let us watch how it is burning, shall we? Another topic, John Ratcliffe confirmed as CIA director. What is known so far and what's to expect? And a third topic, cherry on the top, Ablaze interview with Dr. Frank Ledwidge, senior lecturer in war studies at Portsmouth University. We will be talking about all that and more. For example, what would Dr. Ledwidge do if in charge of the Ukrainian army? Good afternoon, my name is Henry Keane and we are UATV English and English-speaking Ukrainian state media in constant persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. The Security Service of Ukraine and Ukraine Special Operations Forces successfully struck the Ryazan Oil Refinery and the Ryazan Thermal Power Plant in an overnight drone assault today, as Security Service of Ukraine confirms. The news comes as Russia's defense minister reported intercepting as much as 121 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 37 in Bryansk Oblast, 20 in Ryazan Oblast, and 17 in the Kursk and Saratov Oblast. The refinery, namely only of Russia's largest, one of them, has the capacity of 17 million metric tons of oil per year. At least 3 oil depots and workshops were set ablaze, according to the source. The statement confirms earlier reports in Russian Telegram channels that the Ryazan Oil Refinery caught fire after a drone attack. SBU and SOS drones also targeted an oil pumping station at the Ryazan Thermal Plant, the source also says, without revealing details on possible consequence. Security Service and Special Forces of Ukraine and their drones also targeted an oil pumping station at the Ryazan Thermal Power Plant. Forgive me my smile. The source says without revealing details and possible consequences, but Ryazan lies roughly 500 kilometers, which is 310 miles, roughly north of Ukraine's border. Drones also attacked the Kremny, that is silicon, Kremny L microelectronics plant in Russia's Bryansk and other facilities in the city, the independent Telegram news channel Astra reports, citing Russian emergency ministry sources. It is not immediately clear whether the plant itself, which produces components for the Russian military, suffered significant damage in the attack. However, Andrei Kovalenko, the counter-disinformation chief at Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, also reports on the attack against the Kremny in Russia. The facility has suspended operation after sustaining hits. The plant produced microelectronics for Russian air defense, Iskander missiles, electronic warfare equipment and drones. Well, recent weeks, we all saw Ukraine again intensifies long-range strikes against military and industrial facilities in Russia's rear in an effort, of course, obviously, to undermine Moscow's ability to wage war. Successfully, also obviously, and let us all hope more to come. The United States Senate formally confirmed John Ratcliffe as the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Ratcliffe, who served as President Donald Trump's Director of National Intelligence during part of Trump's first term in office, was confirmed with 74 senator votes in favor and 24 votes against the appointment. Ratcliffe becomes the second Trump nominee to secure an appointment from the Senate days after State Secretary Marco Rubio was sworn into his new post. John Ratcliffe replaces William Burns as the head of the spy agency. In his Senate hearing last week, Ratcliffe alluded to foreign adversaries like Russia and China, referring the need for the United States to improve the use of artificial intelligence. Ratcliffe, a staunch supporter of Trump, also echoed comments from the president that the Russia-Ukraine war threatens to draw the U.S. into conflict with, I quote, a nuclear state. The United States under former President Joe Biden had been Ukraine's key ally, providing substantial financial and military, and since the all-out war began nearly 3 years ago. Washington is also reported to have consistently shared military intelligence data to bolster Ukraine's defense. During his term as the head of the CIA, ex-CIA Director William Burns was not only regularly communicating with Ukrainians and Ukrainian officials for purposes of intelligence sharing, but also made his final visit to Kyiv in December 21 to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky, marking a rare public acknowledgement of their discussions during Russia's full-scale invasion. Such encounters were typically kept confidential. However, we all saw in the video before that Ukraine surely pulled the intel delivered by American partners to very good use. Regarding that saying by John Ratcliffe about that America is risking a direct conflict with a nuclear state, well, I'm sorry to break it to you like that, Mr. Ratcliffe, but Ukraine also was a nuclear state and ceased to be such solely because the United States made it to in pursuit of a peace treaty with Russia. Yes, that peace treaty that Russia violated when it invaded Ukraine, and there are literally no treaties Russia didn't violate, so it is unclear yet if the Trump administration will continue to provide the same level of intelligence sharing with Ukraine as we received during the Biden administration. However, one thing is clear: loyalty is above all is surely a motto of Trump's administration. Not sure where it would bring us all, but absolutely sure it will bring us all into that brave new world, whether some of us accept it or not. As I promised, cherry on the top, Blitz interview with Dr. Frank Ledwidge, Senior Lecturer in War Studies at Portsmouth University. Hello, Mr. Ledwidge. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Hello.
Good afternoon. Good to be here.
Thank you. John Ratcliffe, as CIA Director. I know William Burns was a vocal and very public and helpful ally of Ukraine as CIA Director. What about Ratcliffe? Do you know anything, any comments on that?
Well, he has just passed his Senate confirmation, although not with a unanimous vote. He is, as I understand it, something of a Washington player, started out as a lawyer and politician.
Right.
And now I think to the extent there are serious complaints against him, which I don't think, or clearly have not been significant in terms of halting his confirmation, he's got very close connections, I think, with a lot of tech companies and particularly AI operators. And some are concerned about that. But look, I've no doubt that he will act in his country's interests. The CIA is a massive bureaucracy. To my mind, the more important appointment really is Tulsi Gabbard, for whom I have a very great deal of regard at being a veteran herself. So a really hard-spoken advocate in US interests. And whatever country you're in, it's the job of an intelligence commander or leader to act in your country's interests. And I think both of those appointments will. As to their effect on Ukraine, I can't see it being significant either way.
Well, yeah, AI tech companies are connected to him, that's for sure, because Mr. Ratcliffe mentioned that United States should be using artificial intelligence more. What a coincidence.
Well, yeah, well, look at their pacing threat, which is the People's Republic of China, who are and have declared themselves to be taking as a priority the development of military AI, and that any dominance in that would existentially affect the United States. So absolutely, they have to gain dominance in that and of course, many other domains.
I can't argue with the fact. Let's smoothly slide to Russia, shall we? The Kremlin mouthpiece, Maria Zakharova, recently said that international peacekeepers in Ukraine will lead to, I quote her, uncontrolled escalation, whatever that means. Like now is a controlled escalation. What are your thoughts on the matter that international peacekeepers, the idea in general, and Russian red lines and threats of uncontrolled escalation, if that happens in particular?
Yeah, well, we all know Miss Zakharova and her perhaps sometimes occasional lack of self-control herself. But concerning the peacekeepers, look, people have to understand there will be no NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine for two reasons. First of all, they won't be accepted in any peace deal. Secondly, even if they were, NATO could deploy between 20 and 30,000 at any one time.
Right.
And for a frontier, if we're talking about NATO peacekeepers here, and for a frontier of 1,000 kilometers, that won't work. NATO is very weak in actual strength. On paper, of course, it has millions of people under command, but in reality, they're a bit of a paper tiger.
All right. Well, recent Russian oil refineries. I would love to talk, don't get me wrong, I would love to talk about the paper tiger of NATO. Maybe we make that a topic of our next discussion. But now, recent Russian oil refineries set ablaze, set alight. Do you think that the Kremlin feels anything about that? Yeah, I mean, economically, politically, militarily.
Well, first of all, if I can just cut back for 10 seconds on the NATO thing, what I mean is NATO without the US is a paper tiger. But returning to the refineries, just want to put a couple of things in context. And I was personally involved in these wars and taken an interest in them. So the first one against Serbia, we had 38,000 air sorties, strike sorties against Serbian targets in a period of about 3 months, which essentially did the job, although didn't do much damage to the Serbian armed forces. In Iraq in 1991, which is a bit more of an accurate analogy since Iraq is quite big, much smaller than Russia, of course, it was 103,000 jet bomber sorties. Now, a few drones into the occasional oil refinery or arms dump, I'm afraid, will not make any significant dent, I think the term used, in Russia's capability. I'm sorry about that. That's just the military fact of it. If you want to break up a large country's military and industrial capability, you need tens of thousands of missions and strike points to do that. It's called strike density in military terminology, and Ukraine simply doesn't have that at the moment.
Whatever we do. So, all right, so Ukrainian army, if you were in charge, what would you change in first thing as a chief commander of Ukrainian army?
Okay, well, it's very easy and lots of people do the armchair generalship, which I don't think I or they should do. But one observation I would make first before a suggestion is to fire and expel from the country every Western general that purports to give advice. None of these people have fought a war in anything like the way Ukraine's fighting them. And I've fought in the same wars, and I can assure you that's true. They are not the wars we fought were brush wars, and they all failed in any event. Fire them, dismiss them, and don't listen to a word they say. Ukrainian generals, or there are Ukrainian generals, I've no doubt, who are perfectly capable of handling the kind of flexible defence that the country needs. And were they to be promoted, because certainly they're not in place now, I would urge their chiefs of staff to read some military history and look at the campaigns by the British General Slim in the Second World War, the Russian General Zhukov, or the German General Henrici, all of whom were masters of defensive warfare. But since we don't have that academic luxury, what I would say is, if you were in charge of the Ukrainian armed forces now, find young officers, battalion commanders, brigade commanders who have succeeded, who are respected by their men, and you and I know they exist, promote them and promote them for success and fire failures from the top to the bottom. As for what they should do, I can't say, but I'm sure I'm echoing many Ukrainians, including Ukrainian soldiers, who might state that this constant pattern of salients developing, last stands, and then abandoning soldiers in them, such as going on now, for example, in Velika Novosilka or Avdiivka or Bakhmut or half a dozen others, is no way forward. It's no way forward. What it results is in dead people, dead Ukrainian soldiers for no palpable gain. And that, to me, looks like poor planning and poor operational, a poor and disastrous operational perspective.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Ledvich, for this detailed answer. And the last question, Donald Trump, does he have the capability to talk the language he's talking to Russian dictator? I mean, is that the ultimatum? I mean, he says this way or the hard way. Can he do that?
Well, you know as well as I do about the answer to that. And no, I don't think anybody, even the closest people to him, know the answer to that. I'll just make the observation, certainly he can speak to Putin in his own language, for better or worse. Whether he should involve Ukraine, or whether he will involve, I should say, Ukraine, on certainly won't involve the Europeans in this. So I think we've seen that. Right. Is another question. But look, I'm fairly confident if anyone can do it, he can. I think there's some doubts that are being raised, though, now, and you're probably aware of this, about General Kellogg. And his background in this. But look, he's the person that's in place, and we'll see how that goes over the next 3-4 months.
Let's do that. Thank you so very much for this Blitz interview. It is always a pleasure, and your expertise is amazing. Thank you so very much.
I always consider it a pleasure and a privilege to be on your channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, sir. Likewise. Goodbye. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so very much for your time with us. My name is Enrique, and we are UATV English and English-speaking Ukrainian state media, doing our very, very best to deliver our truth in easy terms for you, for the whole free world, directly from Ukraine. So please don't shy out to like, share, and comment, even if you think so that you do not matter. Trust me, your voice matters a lot, as it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard globally. So please stay safe, and to inform more in a weekly episode. Goodbye.